was the kind of night when even the wind seemed afraid to breathe. The street outside was silent, the trees swaying gently in the darkness, their bare branches scraping against the sides of old houses like skeletal fingers. Anna had just returned home from work, a long, tiring shift at the diner, and all she wanted was a hot shower, a snack, and a few quiet hours to herself. Her parents were away for the weekend, visiting her grandmother in another town, leaving Anna alone in the two-story house on Ravenhill Road. It wasn't her first time being home alone, but that night, something felt different. The air felt heavier. The house creaked and groaned as it usually did when the temperature dropped, but every sound felt magnified in the silence. After her shower, Anna settled into the couch with a blanket, scrolling through her phone and half-watching a horror movie. Around midnight, the movie paused suddenly, buffering. The Wi-Fi had dropped out. She sighed, tossing her phone aside, and walked toward the router near the stairs. As she crouched down to reset it, a faint tap, tap, tap came from the back door. She froze. The sound came again, 3 gentle taps as if someone was testing the door. Her first thought was that it might be the wind or maybe a branch hitting the glass. But when she peeked toward the kitchen, she saw the silhouette of a figure standing behind the frosted glass window. Anna's heart slammed against her ribs. She ducked behind the wall, her mind racing. She lived in a quiet, safe neighborhood. Things like this didn't happen here. Slowly, she peeked again. The figure was gone. She waited for several minutes, then exhaled shakily, convincing herself it had just been a trick of her imagination or a delivery person at the wrong address. She locked the door, double-checking the latch, and went back to the living room. But when she sat down, she noticed something chilling. The front porch light, which she had left on, was now off. It was a motion sensor light that only turned off after several minutes of stillness. Her stomach twisted. Someone had walked by recently. She tried calling her parents, but there was no signal. The Wi-Fi still wasn't back, and her mobile data barely worked in their rural area. She decided to turn on all the lights in the house, a small act that made her feel a little safer. By 12:40 a.m., she was in her bedroom upstairs, lying in bed but wide awake. Every sound made her jump. The old floorboards creaked, and the house seemed alive in the silence. She was just starting to drift off when she heard the faintest click, the sound of a door, handle turning downstairs. Her breath caught. She strained to listen. Nothing. Then another sound, the slow, deliberate creak of the floor at the bottom of the stairs. Anna slid out of bed silently, her bare feet cold against the floor. She grabbed her phone and turned on the flashlight. Moving to her doorway, she peeked down the dark staircase. There was movement, just a shadow, slow and smooth, gliding along the wall. She whispered, "Hello?" but no one answered. The silence was suffocating. Then came the unmistakable sound of a door shutting, the back door. She bolted downstairs, adrenaline pumping, but the back door was locked. The bolt was still in place. Confused and trembling, she stepped into the kitchen. The light flickered slightly, and in that moment, she saw it, a muddy footprint on the tile floor, fresh and wet, leading away from the door toward the living room. Someone had been inside. Anna's mind screamed to run, but her body wouldn't move. She turned slowly toward the living room, heart pounding so loudly it drowned out everything else. The front door was slightly ajar, just a sliver of darkness, visible through the opening. She could have sworn she locked it earlier. As she reached for the doorknob, she heard it, breathing. Deep, heavy breathing, and not hers. It was coming from behind the couch. Every instinct in her screamed to get out. She backed up slowly, eyes locked on the couch, then turned and sprinted toward the stairs. But as she reached the first step, she heard footsteps rushing after her. She screamed and darted into her room, slamming the door shut and locking it. Something slammed against it seconds later, hard enough to shake the frame. She dialed 911, hands shaking so badly she almost dropped the phone. The operator answered, her calm voice cutting through the chaos. Anna whispered that someone was in the house, that she was alone. The operator told her to stay on the line, that police were on their way. The pounding on the door stopped suddenly. The silence that followed was even worse. Anna pressed her ear against the door. Nothing. Then she heard soft creaks like footsteps moving away. A minute later, the sound of a window opening somewhere downstairs. The operator kept her talking, telling her to stay hidden until the police arrived. Anna whispered, "He's leaving. I think he's leaving." But even as she said it, she wasn't sure. Within minutes, red and blue lights flashed outside her window. She heard the front door burst open, voices shouting, "Police!" She unlocked her door and ran down the stairs, tears streaming down her face. Two officers met her halfway and led her outside. When they searched the house, they found the window in the laundry room pried open. Muddy footprints led from the window to the living room, and then stopped. The back door was still locked, but the footprints, they ended right in the middle of the room as if the intruder had simply vanished. The officers searched the woods behind the house but found nothing. No car, no tracks, no sign of anyone. One of them told Anna that sometimes intruders run when they realize someone's home. But Anna knew what she'd heard. Those slow, deliberate footsteps, the breathing behind the couch, the pounding on the door. She wasn't imagining it. That night changed her forever. She couldn't sleep alone anymore. Her parents installed cameras and new locks, but Anna still moved out a few months later. The strange part came later. When reviewing the footage from the night of the break-in, the police noticed something odd. Around 11:58 p.m., before the Wi-Fi went out, a figure could be seen standing across the street, staring directly at the house. For almost 10 minutes, it didn't move. When the lights inside flickered, the figure took a step closer, right before the signal cut off. No one was ever caught. Sometimes when Anna drives past Ravenhill Road late at night, she swears she still sees that dark silhouette standing near the tree line, facing her old home, waiting. It was the second night of winter break, and Ryan was looking forward to a quiet weekend at home. His parents had left that morning to visit his aunt in another city, and he'd chosen to stay behind to finish a college project. He wasn't afraid of being alone. Their neighborhood was peaceful, surrounded by tall pine trees and long, empty roads. But peace can play strange tricks on the mind, especially when silence stretches too long. By 9 p.m., the house had settled into its usual stillness. The heater hummed softly. The clock ticked steadily, and outside, a light snow began to fall. Ryan sat at his desk, typing, headphones in, when he heard a faint tapping. He paused his music. The sound came again, tap, 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 from somewhere behind him. He turned, scanning the room. Nothing. The sound stopped. He shrugged it off as pipes or the wind and went back to work. Minutes passed. Then, tap, 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 louder this time. It wasn't random. It was rhythmic, almost like someone was knocking in threes. He pulled out his earbuds and listened. The sound seemed to come from the wall next to his closet. Slowly, he walked over and pressed his ear against the cold plaster. Silence. He waited, holding his breath. Then came a low whisper, faint but unmistakable. "Let me out!" Ryan stumbled back, his skin crawling. He blinked hard, convincing himself he'd imagined it. The heater, the pipes. Maybe it was just sound distortion, but deep down something inside him tightened with dread. He checked the wall, no cracks, no holes. He even peeked inside the closet. Empty. The tapping had stopped again. He laughed nervously and returned to his desk, trying to ignore the pounding of his heart. For a while, everything was normal. But as the night deepened, the air in the house began to feel heavier, still suffocating. Around midnight, Ryan made himself a coffee in the kitchen. He stared out the window while waiting for the kettle to boil. Snowflakes drifted down like ash, coating the empty street. Then, reflected faintly in the window, he saw something behind him, a movement, a shadow crossing the hallway. He spun around. Nothing. The hall was empty. He walked to the living room, calling softly, "Hello?" His voice echoed through the house. The only answer was the wind howling outside. He told himself it was just the lighting. Reflections, maybe. But as he walked back toward his room, he noticed something strange. The basement door was open. He froze. He never used the basement, and he was sure he hadn't opened it. The darkness beyond the door seemed to swallow the hallway. Slowly he approached, peering down the wooden steps. A cold draft blew up from below, carrying a faint smell of damp earth. He flicked on the light, but the bulb didn't turn on. He stood there for a moment, debating. Then, against his better judgment, he descended the creaking stairs, phone flashlight cutting through the gloom. The basement was cluttered with boxes, old furniture, and shadows that stretched unnaturally along the walls. Everything seemed normal until he heard it again, tap, tap, tap. But this time, it was coming from inside one of the walls down here. He moved closer, heart pounding. The sound grew louder, faster, then stopped. And then through the silence, a whisper came again. Clear, closer. "Why did you open the door?" Ryan's flashlight flickered. He stepped back, breathing hard. "Who's there?" No answer. Then a soft scraping sound, like nails dragging slowly down the inside of the wall. He stumbled backward, tripping over a box, and ran up the stairs, slamming the basement door shut behind him. Back in the kitchen, he tried to steady his breathing. Maybe someone had broken in. Maybe an animal was trapped in the walls. He grabbed a knife and his phone, ready to call the police, but his phone had no signal. He stared at the screen, confused. It had worked perfectly just moments ago. He turned toward the window to check if it was just reception, but what he saw made his blood run cold. There were footprints in the snow outside, fresh ones, leading up to the side of the house, and they stopped right below his bedroom window. Ryan's knees nearly gave out. He backed away slowly, every instinct screaming to run. He went to the front door, but before he could unlock it, the sound came again, tap, 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 and this time from inside the ceiling. His hands trembled as he looked up. The sound crawled across the ceiling, from the hallway to directly above him. Then came the whisper again, lower, more urgent. "Don't leave me." Ryan dropped the knife and bolted upstairs, desperate to grab his jacket and get out. But when he reached his room, his stomach twisted. His desk chair had been moved. It was now facing the closet. The same closet where he'd first heard the voice. He took a step back, shaking his head. No. No, no, no! His flashlight beam trembled as he aimed it at the closet. The door was slightly open now. From the crack between the doors, something was visible, pale, almost white. Like a hand pressed against the wood, Ryan screamed and ran down the stairs, wrenching the front door open and sprinting barefoot into the snow. The cold bit into his skin, but he didn't care. He ran across the yard and down the street toward the neighbor's house. When he looked back, his heart nearly stopped. A face was peeking through his bedroom window. Pale, expressionless, eyes dark and hollow. He pounded on the neighbor's door until lights flicked on inside. The elderly couple next door opened up, startled, and let him in. He tried to explain, but his words came out in a rush. The knocking, the whispering, the basement. The husband called the police immediately. When officers arrived, they searched every inch of the house. The basement, the walls, the attic, and all empty. No footprints inside. No signs of forced entry except the ones Ryan made when running out. But they did find one thing that chilled everyone to the bone. Behind the drywall in the basement, right where Ryan said he'd heard the voice, there was a small hollow space, like a hidden compartment. Inside it, they found an old wooden doll, its face cracked and painted with faded red lips. A strip of paper was tied around, its neck with a single message scrawled, in shaky handwriting. "Why did you wake me up?" The officers dismissed it as some kind of leftover from the previous owners. But Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that something else had been there. Something that knew he was alone. That night he stayed with the neighbors. And when his parents returned the next day, they decided to sell the house. 2 months later, after the family moved out, the new owners contacted them through the real estate agent. They wanted to know if Ryan had been in the house recently, because at night they kept hearing knocking in the same wall. 3 knocks, always in threes. Ryan never went back. But sometimes when he's home alone in his apartment, he swears he still hears it faintly, that same rhythm, tap, 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 and a whisper in the distance saying, "Let me out." Ending line and subscribe hook. And that was story 2, The Voice in the Walls. If you're still listening, that means you've got the courage most people don't. The next story is darker, stranger, and based on a case that's never been explained. So before we dive into the final chapter, make sure you subscribe, tap the bell icon, and become part of our growing horror family. Because in the world of true stories, the scariest ones are the ones that sound like yours.